Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Naomi Newman. I'm here at 3C Ren. As you saw, I just started the recording, so this will be available to you after the course. Today, we have Nick Brown with us, and he's going to talk about modeling all electric homes in the 2022 Energy Code. And before we get started, I just have a few slides to run through. So first, please mute throughout the duration of course. If you'd like to verbally participate, please raise your hand or chat, and then you can be able to unmute yourself. And as it's a small group today, we really encourage you to participate throughout the course, ask questions, use the chat box, and make it a great course. Next slide, please. Just a few words about the Tri-County Regional Energy Network, also known as 3C REN. We're a collaborative partnership between San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. We work to improve energy efficiency in our region by offering free programs and services for building professionals and households. It's funded by ratepayer dollars, which are collected through the public goods charge on the utility bills. And the benefit of being ratepayer funded is that there's no cost to those that we serve, and we can return those dollars right back to our local economy, which historically has missed out on these funds and services. Next slide. We have a few different programs. So the first program, which is bringing you this course today, is the Energy Code Connect program, which serves building professionals by offering Title 24, Part 6, and Part 11 support. Within this program, we offer the Energy Code Coach service, which is an over-the-phone, online, and in-field support for both residential and non-residential projects, and also trainings and supports like the one today. These are designed to increase overall energy code comprehension, compliance, and enforcement. Next slide. Another program we offer is the Building Performance Training Program, which serves building professionals by offering technical and soft skill trainings related to building science principles, high performance buildings, marketing, and communication techniques. Next slide. And our last program at the moment is the Home Energy Savings Program, which incentivizes contractors and helps residents save money and makes their homes healthier through energy efficient upgrades and providing them incentives and rebates to do these upgrades. And with that, I'll pass things over to Nick to get started today.
Thanks, Naomi. All right, welcome everybody. So far the chat's quiet, but let's not keep it that way. I'd really like to know, what do you guys do? How many of you are energy consultants? Raise your hand. Do you know how to raise your hand in this platform? Or put it in the chat. Yeah, it's the three dots, raise hand. No energy consultants. Any architects? At least I'm not seeing any raised hands. Are you, Naomi?
I am not. My raised hand is under React. I guess my Zoom updated recently, so that may
Okay.
have changed. So maybe click React.
All right. Homeowners? I'm going to keep going. So if you guys just want to forestall all this and tell me what you do, we can all save some time here. Better if we're interactive than, sitting back in our chairs. And so I'd like to encourage that if you guys are up for that. Contractors? Where are you guys coming from? Thanks, Chasney. Okay, future homeowner, right on. Roderick's a designer, perfect. There it is. Thank you. I'm sorry I insisted, but really helps me because I now know you're not energy consultants. So I can spend a little less time on that and a little more time on electrification and the technologies and how it all works. That also makes me think, Naomi, I should go out to the garage and show them my heat pump water heater because that's one of those technologies that people maybe haven't seen before that are absolutely key to electrifying.
Yeah, I think it's also great to see it in your space and how that works rather than like a photo. So I think that'd be great if you're up for that, Nick.
Let's do that. Okay. Okay. Well, what we've prepared today is how to model all electric homes. I think because you aren't energy consultants, we'll spend a little less time on the modeling and a little more time on the all electric part. All right. So I'm Nick Brown. I'm coming to you from Long Beach, a little bit south of the 3C Ren area, but I love teaching for 3C Ren because their courses are so thoughtfully selected and designed. There's so many interesting topics that they're offering in your area, and just glad to be invited. I'm an energy consultant by trade, so about half of my time is spent working with designers and architects and homeowners, showing that their projects meet the energy code, known as Title 24. The other half of my time is spent teaching classes and developing classes like this for 3C Ren, for PG&E, for Southern California Edison, and for the statewide Energy Code ACE team. Energy Code ACE is the ratepayer funded compliance improvement education team. And they have all kinds of classes on the energy code, also for architects and energy consultants, all different stakeholders. So I encourage you to check out energycodeace.com and understand what they offer. All right, and Bhaskar would like to learn the CBEC software a little bit. Right on. This is my house in Long Beach. Um, I originally remodeled the main house with gas. We put in an It was a very deep energy retrofit. We wanted it to be efficient. We designed it to be net zero energy with 16 solar panels, but we chose efficient gas furnace and gas tankless water heater and a gas dryer originally. This was in this was 10 years ago now. And everything worked fine. But I started going to conferences and learning more about electrification and realized, you know, if I knew everything I knew now, I would have made this retrofit all electric, no doubt. Wouldn't have been hard, uh, would have been improved indoor air quality, would have been no more money. In fact, today I'll show you some of the incentives that are out there for all electric retrofits. And so I've since corrected that mistake and electrified the main house. So now it's all electric. And 3 years ago, we built the ADU above the garage that's shown here. And we got that right from the start. All electric, net zero carbon was the design goal for that. And we've met that. So I live with these all electric technologies. I collect data on the usage of all the circuits in my home in the ADU. So it's kind of a living lab for classes like this. So please feel free to ask questions about what it's like to live in all electric home, any concerns you have about any of the systems. There's a lot of rumors and some disinformation out there about how they work. So I'd be happy to share my true perspective on it. So our time together, we're going to organize it like this: why electric homes are important, how the energy code encourages electrification, and that wasn't always the case. When I remodeled my main house 10 years ago, the energy code treated gas and electric equally, or if anything, treated gas more favorably than electric. That's changed a lot. And now I'll clearly show that energy code compliance is easier with all electric designs now. And we'll cover CBEC Res, as Bhaskar has asked, how it works to document compliance with the energy code. We'll talk about how all electric designs perform compared to gas mixed fuel designs, and I'll share as many lessons from the field as I can, hopefully fitting in a quick broadcast from the heat pump water heater. Looks like we've got Mike joining us. Naomi, can you let him in?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Welcome, Mike. We're just getting started. Let us know if there's anything in particular you want to make sure we cover today. On to why all electric homes are important. I really like the wording that this US government report or press release used. Transformation of the energy system at a pace without precedent, a giant achievement in human history. That really puts it into perspective for you, what we're trying to do as a state in California to transform our energy grid to be 100% emission-free electricity by 2045, and to electrify our homes and transportation. It's doable, I think, but boy, is it a stretch goal. And I think it's worth thinking about this type of language, giant achievement in human history, to understand just how significant a transformation it is that we're in the middle of right now, or really the early innings of. And why are we talking about electrifying buildings? Because all electric buildings have half the greenhouse gas emissions of the buildings we used to build, the mixed fuel buildings, as shown here for 4 different climate zones across the state. And the modeling software gives you these estimates. When you do a model for compliance, it also computes the greenhouse gas emissions of your proposed design. And so this allows comparisons, which when I have clients who are focused on greenhouse gas emissions and reducing their carbon footprint, I try to show them data like this, because quantifying just how much of a difference that these all electric designs make on their footprint is really motivating and important. So if you have 1 or 2 takeaways today, I hope this is one of them. But what about the dollars and cents? I like to cover that up front. I was an econ major. I have an MBA. Um, run businesses before I became an energy consultant. So let's look at what electrifying your home is likely to do to your utility bills. So this was done about a year ago, this modeling, and we modeled a typical home, conventional mixed fuel. And you see that was expected to have $620 utility bills with standard PV. Add a panel, not a huge improvement. So let's consider that the baseline, the status quo. Put a conventional heat pump in that house, and the electric goes up, the gas goes down, and overall, $720 in utility bills. So it went up $100. But by just adding 1 more solar panel to fuel that heat pump, your total utility bills come back down under the baseline again. And using a high performance heat pump, what we call a variable capacity heat pump, these are ductless mini splits and ducted mini splits with ducts in conditioned space. And now you've got savings, significant savings versus the status quo. And add that same PV panel, and we've got $150 a year in utility cost savings. And this is comparing to homes with solar already. If we were comparing this to mixed fuel status quo homes without solar, and we were adding solar at the same time as we electrifying, well, that's when the economics really sing. So that was done a year ago before NEM 3. I don't know how many of you have followed the stories on the changing way that our utilities compensate us for solar electricity exported to the grid. So we redid this analysis once in Southern California, once in Northern California. You guys all live in between, so you should be somewhere in between. And we looked at utility costs now with NEM 3 in place. And look what we saw. We modeled a 2-story remodel, coastal LA, and the utility costs mixed fuel were a little over $2,000 a year, like 2,200. That's without solar. And just switching that house to electric, bills went up slightly, 2,500 bucks. I mean, not so starkly that a family considering electrifying would say, "Oh, heck no, this makes no sense." It's what is that? $20 a month difference. But then you put a 4 kilowatt solar system on that all electric house and your utility costs plummet. Now you're saving $1,000 a year in utility costs. That's the formula. And then look what happens when you combine that solar with a battery. Solar contractors now increasingly are encouraging solar customers to also install a battery at the same time because of NEM 3. So we took a look at this. And by the way, the spreadsheet to do this calculation is huge. It is not a simple calculation, but look how much extra you save having that battery paired with solar. Now let's look at the greenhouse gas difference. Just going from gas to electric, there's the 50% savings. And now putting solar or solar and battery in the mix, that bar's a fraction of the status quo. So every homeowner has the ability to reduce their carbon footprint by, what is that, 75%, and reduce their utility bills by about the same by going all electric with solar and battery. Questions on that, guys? Because that's a key takeaway. Here are the numbers in Northern California under PG&E NEM 3. Similar, not quite as strong as savings. They have some differences in rates. They have a different set of export rates as well. But look, the electric system is barely more cost in PG&E territory. And there's some nice significant savings to put that solar system on and solar and battery. And what is that? Probably a 2/3 reduction in greenhouse gases go to solar and battery and all electric. So that's why we're here talking about electrifying homes, yeah? And if you haven't been following what our legislature and elected officials are doing, they've been doing a lot in this area, setting climate goals for us, including 40% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. There's SB 100, the 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045, carbon neutrality by 2045 as an economy, 40% reduced greenhouse gas emissions in buildings, incentives under tech and build, no internal combustion car sales here by 2035. And then the US government got in on the act with the Defense Production Act and the IRA. Some of those IRA programs end up filtering through the California Energy Commission in the form of rebate programs for us as well. We'll talk about some of those, notably HERA. And don't forget the Paris Accords. With the election last week, those are highly in doubt as to how the US will participate. But all this contributes to American leadership and being an example for the rest of the world on trying to meet those goals. So there's this perception that gas is the most efficient, cheapest way to create electricity, power our buildings. But wind and solar are clearly cheaper ways to generate electricity now. That those curves have bent down. And when we look at forecasted energy rates for us as homeowners and our clients, the gas rates are predicted to shoot up at a much higher rate than the electric rates. Now, yes, our electric rates are increasing at an alarming pace as well. But this is from the IPER report, where one of the premier energy consulting firms in California, E3, looks at what's likely to be the cost of gas in homes in future. And because electrification is the direction our state government wants us to go, there's going to be fewer and fewer gas customers left paying the fixed cost to maintain that gas delivery system. And that's the driver that makes that curve spike upwards. So it's almost like there's a advantage for first movers electrifying and avoiding that steep curve of gas usage costs. Now, the round dots shown in 2023 are actual average electricity prices that we've been seeing and average, well, I shouldn't say average, but peak gas prices. Remember, there was a huge spike in gas prices. They went up all the way above $4 a therm, which was the predicted average gas cost for by 2030, what, 7. So we're already seeing periods of extreme volatility in gas prices. I believe that was connected to the invasion of Ukraine. So staying on electricity insulates us from those price shocks as well, which are really hard for people to manage in terms of their budgets. So the incentives are never going to be this good, and I've never seen incentives this good since I've been in the industry. There are multiple programs that can be stacked on top of one another to electrify existing homes. There's other programs to build new homes all electric. Those aren't our focus today. But between the Energy Smart Homes program, the Tech Clean California program, the federal tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and others, it's easy to get up to $15,000 in total incentives to electrify your house. That can go a long way towards purchasing those heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, hiring an architect, upgrading your panel if needed, covering solar panels, right? And these incentives won't last forever. They're designed to start high and taper off. So now's the time if you're considering a project like this. If you are a low-income homeowner or work with low-income homeowners, there's an additional program called HERA available to you, funded by the federal government through the IRA, administered by the Energy Commission, available now. And that makes $14,000, up to $14,000 available to retrofit all electric as well. Chesney, is an electric house run on a generator other than solar panel? Well, an electric house can be powered by the grid with no solar panels, right? Running it on a generator makes it no longer an all-electric house, right? That generator is burning diesel, burning gas. That now is an entirely gas house. So no, when we're talking about electrical and an all-electric house, we're talking about one whose all end uses have been converted to electric, and it's receiving electricity from the grid and or on-site solar panels. So solar panels are not a necessary requirement to be all electric. They just vastly help the economics and the greenhouse gas emissions. Good question. So you can get up near $30,000 using incentives to electrify existing low-income housing. And I'm working on a project right now to electrify a 10-unit building here in Long Beach. And I think we're going to be able to find enough incentives to fully pay for all of the work. It's amazing what these incentive programs can do. So I highly encourage you to look into that. So that's the carrot: lower utility costs, lower greenhouse gas emissions, and big incentives. So the energy code already encourages electrification. Let me show you some pieces of the energy code that are encouraging us in this direction. First, the 2022 code we're currently in sets prescriptive standards for heat pumps. The purple climate zones have a heat pump water heater prescriptive standard. The pink climate zones have a heat pump for space conditioning prescriptive standard. So one or the other statewide. Now, prescriptive standard doesn't mean it's mandatory, but in the energy code compliance world, if we're complying prescriptively, we need to meet all those prescriptive standards. So simple projects may comply prescriptively and therefore need to meet these. Most projects comply via the performance method, the modeling approach, which is what Bhaskar wants to make sure we cover today. And when we're modeling, it's a side-by-side comparison of our proposed house and the prescriptive standard design house. So if the prescriptive standard in your climate zone, let's say we're in climate zone 5 in 3C REN territory, that's a heat pump water heater prescriptive standard climate zone. If we propose to use a gas tankless water heater, then our proposed home is going to perform much worse than that prescriptive standard home. We're going to make ourselves a compliance deficit that we need to make up for with other upgrades. So we end up spending more money to have a gas tankless water heater in our design than if we chose the prescriptive standard heat pump water heater. So I want you to understand that nuance. It's not mandatory when we say something's prescriptive standard, but it's a strong nudge in that direction. Also in the code, this code cycle, electric retrofit readiness. This says if you install a gas tankless water heater or a gas furnace, there's no mandatory forbidding that. But if you install that gas system, you need to install the electric infrastructure so that in future that can be readily taken out and retrofit to be an electric equivalent. So that means a conduit back to your panel, reserved breaker space in your panel for that future electric dryer, for that future electric heat pump, for the future heat pump water heater, for the future electric cooktop. So this is another strong nudge, because if you have to spend all this money on the electric infrastructure, but in order to install a gas system, you can save money by installing the electric system right up front. This is another nudge policy, economists call it, because it doesn't forbid gas, but it nudges you towards all electric. Range hoods now differentiate between gas cooktops and electric, and more airflow from the range hoods are required when they're placed over natural gas ranges, because those gas ranges create additional pollutants that electric ranges do not. Now, no, you still need a range hood over electric cooktops and induction cooktops, because you're creating moisture, you're creating cooking byproducts that need to be evacuated from the space. So don't think there's no range hood required with induction. There is, but there's higher airflow, bigger range hoods required if you put in a gas cooking system. Okay. And our compliance metrics encourage electrification like never before. In the 2016 code, we had one metric for new construction, addition, and alteration projects, and we called it TDV, time-dependent valuation. There was no solar mandate, there was no incentive for batteries, and whether you used gas or electricity, you got a TDV score, okay? In 2019, the solar mandate went in, and in order to evaluate whether a project met that mandate, the Energy Commission didn't want to allow us to use a big solar system to compensate for an inefficient home. So the way they ensured that we first built an efficient home and then put a right-sized solar system on it was to have a metric called efficiency first that didn't include solar at all, and then have an additional metric, EDR total, that did include solar. So in that way, we were encouraged to build an efficient home with the right size solar system. And in 2022, this new metric was added, EDR source. All three of these metrics need to be met in new single family construction projects in order to build our project that way. And EDR source is a proxy for carbon emissions. So that metric is going to really suffer from choosing a gas system when an electric system is prescriptive standard. Okay, so that was a strong incentive for builders to build all electric. More and more of my Title 24 consultants are choosing to go all electric. And the numbers I recently heard out of the Energy Commission were that new tract builders were building all electric at a clip, something like 70% of new homes were all electric in California now. I'm waiting for the CEC to issue that in an official press release because those are eye-catching stats and really a result of all of the combination of all these energy code changes. And here's what's included in those three 2022 compliance metrics for new construction. Source EDR, that's the carbon metric, converts all of the energy used to carbon emissions, includes solar and battery. Efficiency does not include solar and battery. This is the typical metric we've always used for compliance, the blocking and tackling of energy efficiency. And then the total does include solar. So in that way, by having to meet all three of these metrics concurrently, we got to build efficient with a right-sized solar system that emits no more carbon emissions than the prescriptive standard home. So what this looks like in our software is we're going to have a standard design we have to beat of all three of those metrics and a proposed design number of all three of those metrics. And all three of our proposed design metrics need to be lower than the standard design. Thus, the compliance margins all need to be positive in order to receive this complies message. Any questions on that so far? By the way, non-residential buildings also have a source metric in order to comply now. Okay, so what happens when we switch from gas to electric systems? Does it help or hurt us in terms of compliance? Well, heat pumps, standard, central, nothing special heat pump, gives us on average a 5% boost in efficiency EDR and an 18% boost in source EDR. Pretty solid, right? The variable capacity heat pumps, the mini splits of the world, give us an even bigger boost, 17% efficiency, 24% source. VCHP is the easy button of energy code compliance. It's just a huge help. And this was introduced in the energy code for the first time in 2019. to recognize just how efficient mini splits are. Heat pump water heaters likewise give a boost for energy compliance compared to gas, 8% efficiency, 8% source. Now going to a tier 3 NEA rated heat pump water heater, you get even more. And picking a specific make and model of heat pump water heater really unlocks the full compliance benefit. So this is, I'm going to install the Rheem 50-gallon, or I'm going to install the A.O. Smith HPTS 65. Notice the compliance boost is quite a bit higher when you choose a specific model, but that means that in the field, they actually need to install that model. So it limits flexibility, but helps your project comply. Yeah, when does all housing need to be electric? There were plenty of advocates pushing for the 2022 code to be an all-electric energy code in California and the 2025 code to be an all-electric energy code. But the Energy Commission has a lot of stakeholders to balance their needs, including especially the needs of low-income communities that can't afford higher cost of construction. And so they stopped short of an all-electric energy code. They're working on the 2028 energy code now. No word yet on whether that will require all-electric construction. There's a lot of regulatory details that make an all-electric energy code that's mandatory difficult. And you might have read that Berkeley passed an all-electric reach code just applied to their city, and it was struck down by an appeals court. So no, there's no definite plans to get to all electric, but by putting it in the energy code with incentives, it's happening with the carrot rather than the stick. So here's what that looks like in a bar chart across the 16 climate zones. Just going to a central, what I call a dumb heat pump, a single speed heat pump. There's pretty good compliance boost on efficiency EDR statewide. Some of the milder climate zones, the boost is small, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then in climate zone 16, which is the Sierras, a central heat pump underperforms a gas furnace. But go to the VCHP, the variable speed inverter driven mini splits, and there's a huge compliance credit everywhere in the state. Didn't used to be this way, by the way. Used to be gas systems perform better in the modeling software than electric systems. And then here's the impact of switching from a gas tankless to a heat pump water heater across the 16 climate zones. Generic in yellow, NEA Tier 3 in blue, and make and model specific in orange that really unlocks the full compliance credit. And it's really strong in those mild climate zones, isn't it? Like 7 and 6 and 5. Those are the highest compliance impact of heat pump water heaters in the state. Okay, so bottom line, you're going to do just fine on energy code compliance with heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. Now, this is from the current energy code, which calculates the amount of solar required on new homes in California and new multifamily buildings. It's based on the conditioned floor area and the climate zone and number of dwelling units. So the larger the house, the more solar is required. Now, the way this table was derived was it was calculated such that for a typical mixed fuel house built new to our current code, That is a house with gas heating, gas water heating, gas cooking, gas clothes drying. This solar system size was designed to zero out or fully offset the electric usage of that mixed fuel home. So kind of a net zero electric approach. But as soon as you put a heat pump in instead of the gas furnace, or a heat pump water heater in instead of the gas water heater, you know, you're definitely not going to fully offset the electricity usage of that house because it's going to use more electricity, right? But these are pretty good sized solar systems for mixed fuel houses. But when you get to an all electric house, you're probably going to find it optimal to increase the size of the solar system beyond what the energy code minimum is. So VCHP, I've been talking to you about. These are the mini splits that can adjust the delivery of heating and cooling according to the load in the space. Modulating is what the industry calls that. They're continuously monitoring temperatures outside and inside so that comfort is improved. You hold temperature with fewer of those swings up and down, less of that jet engine blowing in your face and then completely turning off that we all grew up with HVAC systems like that. The units are quiet, great for narrow lot lines. They have long lifespan because they run so much of the time at low load. Their efficiency ratings, as judged by their SEER ratings, are quite a bit better than standard equipment. And I just showed you significant compliance credit for including these in your design. Now, they're also very versatile. They can be ductless, like the high wall units. They can be ducted. They can be a combination of ductless and ducted. So these are really where the industry's headed. And when I talk to HVAC subs, they generally are quoting jobs about the same money to put in a heat pump versus what we've always done, a gas furnace and an air conditioner. So you should not break the budget with the choice of a heat pump. So let's look now at how modeling works for all electric homes. Most of you aren't energy consultants, so stop me if I'm going a little bit too fast and you want me to spend a little more time on things. These are screenshots from the software, CBREC Res on the left and Energy Pro on the right, showing how we specify a heat pump. On the left, we're putting in a 3-ton dumb heat pump. It's a single speed central split heat pump. Nothing special about it. The SEER2 and HSPF2 ratings are code minimum. The verified refrigerant charge gives a small credit for our project. And you see we put the capacity in at 2 different temperatures, 47 degrees and 17 degrees. Obviously, a heat pump, when it's really cold outside at 17 degrees, generates less heat than when it's 47 degrees. And both those numbers are required to put in the software. This is really important because it's going to show up on the form, and the HERS rater, there's a whole squad of HERS raters across the state who are required to verify key energy efficiency features of the home before certificate of occupancy can be granted. So they're checking things like duct leakage. They're checking that insulation is properly installed. And they have to check the heat pump capacity that we put in the form matches what was installed. Because if you install too small a heat pump, then when it falls short of the heating demand, the electric resistance backup element kicks on, and those are much less efficient. So what this check is designed to do is make sure that a large enough heat pump has been installed for the load. Okay. And then we're doing the same thing on the Energy Pro screen on the right, just a different format. Now there's a lot of other options for heat pumps, including VCHP shown on the left and the right. And when we do that, we're going to get credit for those significantly improved compliance scores that I showed you earlier. Notice there's ductless mini splits, ducted mini splits. When you model a mini split using one of those options, you don't get the full compliance credit that you get when you select VCHP. So that really is, if you need compliance boost, that VCHP is the way to go. I should mention when we specify a central heat pump, what I affectionately call a dumb heat pump, you can put in enhanced SEER2 and HSPF2 values and get some credit for that, but it's not going to be as good as the VCHP credit. Heat pump water heaters are specified in a different window. You see here we're specifying in CBEC Res on the left, and actually these are both CBEC Res. We've specified a 50-gallon heat pump water heater. And then we've drilled down into the water heater itself to say this is a generic tier 3 50+ gallon unit. Notice you also have to specify where it's located, because heat pumps heat the water by taking heat from the air around them. They're not generating every BTU of heat by burning gas or using electricity. They're using the heat pump. So the heat of the air around the heat pump water heater has a big impact on its efficiency. So if we tell the software, we're going to put this outside, or we're going to put this in a garage, or we're going to put this inside conditioned space, well, that's going to affect the efficiency of the heat pump water heater. So for that reason, you never have to say where you're putting your gas water heater, but you do have to say where you're putting your heat pump water heater, which means when you work with your design teams, you need to think about the location for the heat pump water heater early in the design stage before you go to Title 24. So my best architects send me plans where they've already reserved space. They've got an exterior facing closet or an interior facing closet or a corner of the garage reserved to the heat pump water heater. So I know exactly how to model that. Because the biggest obstacle to implementing heat pump water heaters, in my experience, is finding the space for them. Because we've gotten really used to gas tankless water heaters, haven't we? That can be bolted to a wall and not take up any floor space. So we really need to design it in from the start. Okay, the person who installed the heat pump can see this screen. Not exactly. This screen is the energy modeler's screen. But when the energy modeler's done, they produce a CF1R report. That says we're going to comply with the energy code with this set of features in the home. And that the homeowner sees, the general contractor sees, the plumber sees. Good question. And yes, it will have a note on exactly what kind of heat pump water heater is supposed to be installed and exactly what kind of heat pump is supposed to be installed. By the way, that form is also used at the city to grant your permit. Okay, here's an Energy Pro, just a slightly different format, but the same idea. You're telling it what type of heat pump, water heater. The benefit of choosing a generic, like we're doing on this screen here, is they can install any manufacturer without having to change your compliance form. Whereas if we tell the software we're installing an A.O. Smith of a certain model number, and then they install a Rheem, well, we need to go back and edit our form, which isn't a big deal, but it is something to coordinate. Now in multifamily, there's two approaches that people generally use for water heating, either a water heater in each unit or a central big water heater that serves all the units. And we can model both in the software. I'm not going to go into it too much, but these are the screens in CBEC Res to do so. Now, Title 24 has regulated loads and unregulated loads. Heating and cooling, water heating, those are regulated loads. But cooking and clothes drying are not. Okay, so we're not measured on how much energy use our clothes dryer uses. So the software really doesn't care. You can put in gas or electric, but you do need to tell the software what it's going to be. And if you're applying for an incentive program to electrify a building, they're going to look to make sure all these things are shown as electric. But it's important to get this right because that's going to give you an estimate of your total electricity and gas usage, which you can then use to size your solar system. Now there's a new option for mini splits coming soon. And I've been saying this for unfortunately over a year, but right now the VCHP credit is one size fits all. It's an average compliance boost based on what the CEC has measured in the field. But advanced heat pumps, including ducted heat pumps, are soon going to have a way to model them called the detailed VCHP credit that will extend VCHP compliance credit to many more types of heat pumps. Right now, that VCHP credit's perfect for ductless mini splits, a little bit more hoops to jump through for ducted. So stay tuned. Now the software will give us output like this. This is showing kilowatt hours and therms of the standard design by end use on the left, kilowatt hours and therms of our proposed design on the right. And notice both the standard and proposed design here have no therms. They're all electric. And you see the compliance totals on top. These are the regulated loads: heating, cooling, ventilation for indoor air quality, water heating. Down below the line are the unregulated loads, the lighting, appliances, plug loads. But you see the proposed design here. The solar production is shown as a minus, and the net usage minus solar production is shown at the bottom. 1,019 kilowatt hours are expected to be used by this house net after solar. So you see how you can use this output to, one, optimize your building and design it with the right efficiency equipment, but you can also size your solar system according to your expected usage. You also notice this house isn't quite in compliance yet. Our proposed EDR2 score is too high, and it gives us a compliance margin by end use. So what end use do you see that our EDR2 score for our proposed building is too high? Yeah, plug loads are the electric plug outlets. So that's your TVs, your plug-in appliances, your computers, all that stuff. What end use do you see a negative compliance margin on? Yeah, Boscar's on it. Heating. right? So this summary screen gives us useful hints on where we're falling short. In this case, for some reason, heating's way high. You notice there's almost no cooling in this example. This is a climate zone 5, San Luis Obispo climate zone, where there is no need for cooling because the climate's so friendly. Great job. So let's just put all this together now. I've tried to walk you through how the energy code encourages all electric. I've showed you the compliance difference for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters compared to typical gas. Now let's look at the whole house all electric versus the whole house typical and see what that looks like. Awesome is how it looks because the all electric efficiency EDR score is on average 7 points better or 16%. Remember, that's the blocking, that's the metric we're most used to. And the new source metric, which is greenhouse gas emissions, well, that comparison's even stronger compared to mixed fuel. 50% better, which sort of lines up with what I told you early on today, that all electric homes have half the greenhouse gas emissions of mixed fuel homes, right? And I got to tell you, when I remodeled my house 10 years ago, we got better compliance scores with gas than electric. And that's because now all of the compliance weighting factors, what we call TDV factors, have been updated to better reflect what we now know about future social costs of electric versus gas. Uh, greenhouse gas emissions are better reflected. In multifamily, we see a similar relationship. We modeled this 36 unit building in Irvine, and the best thing you can do to boost a building like this is all electric with a ductless mini split in each unit, taking that VCHP credit. So here's a snapshot from the software. Dual fuel on the left. This was a project that was quite a ways away from complying. 11 source EDR points, 4 efficiency EDR points, and switching that to all electric with VCHP and a heat pump water heater, swung it completely the other direction. Oh, I hope you like this chart. These are climate zones in 3C REN territory. Okay, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 16. And here you see the efficiency EDR and source EDR compliance margins for gas compared to those same compliance margins once those houses have been switched to all electric. This is for a typical one-story new home with code minimum systems, both gas and electric. Just those compliance margins look a whole lot better all electric, don't they? And then we did the same thing for multifamily and saw a similar relationship. Not quite as strong, but still electric outperforms gas in every climate zone. Remodels too. Here's the gas TDV score versus the electric TDV score. In every case, if you remodel that house all electric, you're going to outperform gas. Chasney asked about San Diego. San Diego has historically, or in recent history, had the highest electric rates in the state, right? Which tends to discourage electrification a little bit, although the economics still look good when you combine electrification with solar. But I don't have an answer for you. I do believe new tract homes are being built at that same 60, 70% all electric clip in San Diego, but I don't have any specific data on that. I just heard that anecdotally recently. Yeah, you should see a lot of electric homes. I would say remodels and custom homes are less all electric is less common than the tract homes, because those home builders, they crunch every number. They have got to build, at the most cost effective rate, because they're building hundreds of these things. They've got shareholders to, perform for. Um, Whereas custom homes, are less disciplined, I guess, about the analysis. Other thing that makes tract homes more likely to build all electric is they can save on average $7,000 not running gas to the lots, just the gas line down the middle of the street. And that can have a huge impact on attractive homes. Whereas if the gas has already landed at the house, you don't have that same savings. All right, let me share some lessons from the field now. If we're specifying a heat pump, how's that different than a gas furnace? Well, I showed you have to specify the capacity, and that's a HERS verified capacity measure. So we need to get those heat pumps sized right. There's also a HERS verification if you're taking the VCHP credit. So keep that in mind. They're going to be looking to make sure that you have wall-mounted thermostats, not just the remote controls, and that there's an indoor unit for every space over 150 square feet, and that you don't have your ducts in unconditioned space. Also think about HERS verification. You guys aren't energy modelers by trade, so you don't have to worry too much about this, but each ducted system needs to have duct leakage testing done. So you really have to build your compliance model with those HERS verifications in mind. Because sometimes those mini split heat pumps are combinations of ducted and ductless. Because what we don't want to happen is we generate our compliance form CF1R with incomplete information on the HVAC. We upload it to the HERS registry. Then the HVAC units that are installed are different than what was on the compliance form. And the architect sends the plans back for revisions. I call this boomeranging. It's just wasted energy. Much better off having that HVAC system specified at the time you're submitting for permit, or have the HVAC sub follow what's on the compliance form. And that way the HERS verifications go smoothly, as does the final inspection. So for this reason, we now offer HVAC load calcs as part of our services, optional, but that way we do a load calc of the design ahead of time, find out, for instance, it's a 4-ton system for the first floor and a 2-ton for the second floor. We put that in our compliance model from the start, and that's what's installed. And this is the software we use. It's a 3D software, which allows us to avoid boomeranging of projects, because our compliance form sizes them right using either quick model shown here, or Energy Pro also has a module, a report, where you can pull peak heating and cooling loads out based on your compliance report. CREC-RES does not have the same report built into it. We want to get the number of systems right too. Take this 2-story house here. If it's being heated and cooled by a single system, or 2 systems, well, we need to know that, because the HERS verifications are going to need to be performed on either 1 system or 2, and they can't do verifications on 2 systems if the compliance form only shows 1. It's also important to get ducted or ductless right, because ducted systems require certain verifications, ductless don't. Also important to get the efficiencies right, because if we need an upgraded SEER2 value to get our project to comply, well, that upgraded SEER2 equipment needs to be installed in the field, or now we don't comply anymore. So you see why there needs to be better coordination with heat pumps between the energy consultant and the designer and the HVAC subs. What about electrical panels? How can I electrify my house with the existing panel I have? It's going to take more power, isn't it? Yeah, and I find clients are being told all over the state that they need bigger electrical panels by their electricians. But we need to kind of keep them honest on that assessment with tools like Watt Diet shown here. They enable you to put in the basic information of your house, specify all the systems you plan to install in it, and it calculates the National Electrical Code minimum panel size for that combination of loads. So it's a way of you double checking your electrician, because some electricians, believe it or not, don't do the full calcs. They, take a look at your size house and say, 200 amps. When in many cases we find 100 amps, 125, 150 are adequate, even for the all electric designs with EV charging as shown here, even for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. So I encourage you, if you're getting that feedback from your electrician that you need to pay $6,000 for an upgraded electrical panel, uh, you can double check them using Watt Diet. Because my experience is, and I'm being a little cynical here, but when we ask our general contractors to depart from what they're used to, and they're used to gas furnaces and they're used to gas tankless water heaters, they're going to sometimes try to talk us out of that. And this, well, you need to upgrade your electrical panel argument may just be another technique they're using to try to convince you to do what they've always done. Unfortunately, that's the reality with some contractors. Not all, of course, not the majority, but some. So Watt Diet allows you to really dig into that, or hire an electrician to really look at your particular loads and see if you can't make it work with the panel you already have. I know for us, we had 125 amps of service for our main house when we remodeled it mixed fuel, and we were able to go all electric without upgrading that 125 amps. And we have a 100 amp sub panel for the ADU. So we have a combined 200 amp service coming into our house to serve both houses. And I bet some electricians would have said, you need a 400 amp panel if you're going to have two houses. What about battery storage? Does that need a larger panel size? No, not really. But it doesn't allow us to have a smaller panel size either. Solar is ignored in the calculation of panel size, even though it could potentially lower the peak, draw, right? But the battery is usually installed in between the solar and the panel. Even your solar system can be installed without a breaker using what's called a meter collar, where the solar goes straight into the meter and doesn't tie up breaker space. So just understand that your electrician may be erring on the side of too much power, so they don't get a call back. So use Watt Diet or show them your monthly electric usage for the past 12 months and show them, you're not exceeding your your panel, even with those new electric systems added in. But do future-proof your house so that you have enough power for EV charging, solar, batteries, pool equipment. Um, there are cases where it makes sense to upgrade your panel. I just don't want you to not electrify because an electrician who maybe hasn't done the full calcs is telling you you need a bigger panel. Now, you may have more power than you think because if you already have air conditioning, that amount of power is enough to switch that to a heat pump. Yeah. And a heat pump water heater and a heat pump dryer, they can both be run on 120 volt, 15 amp circuits now. Now, some heat pump water heaters are 240 volt, 30 amps, but I put in the 120 volt, 15 amp from Rheem for my main house, and it's working great. So they're making systems that have lower power requirements and still do the job now. It's also highly possible that your home was designed for incandescent lighting loads. And so you might be able to put two lighting circuits together now that they're on LEDs and use that power elsewhere. Now, if those techniques aren't enough, well, circuit sharing devices can make it so you can stay under your current cap, such as sharing a circuit between your EV charger and your stove, or your EV charger and the clothes dryer. So then if you need the clothes dryer, the EV charger takes a break and turns back on when the clothes dryer's done. You can also install combined washer dryers that only use one circuit. And new technologies like the Channing copper induction range that are vastly reduced power requirements compared to typical induction are coming on the market. Also, you don't need a 50 amp EV charger to be able to charge you 0 to full in a couple of hours. 20 to 30 amp, 240 volt EV chargers are more than adequate for most families, and some families can probably get by on standard trickle charging, 120 volt, if they're only driving around town. So don't feel like you have to have a huge amount of power reserved for that. Now, I also wanted to cover a quick do and don't on heat pump water heaters. I've been teaching classes throughout 3C Ren territory recently on this topic to plumbers because heat pump water heaters are not groundbreakingly different, but there are some subtle differences that plumbers need to get right for these to work right. Starting with airflow. Remember I told you that heat pump water heaters take their heat from the air around them? Well, if you only give a small amount of air to the closet, like shown here, the heat pump water heater doesn't have enough heat to do its job. And heat pump water heaters pull heat out of the air that they suck in through their fan and spit out cold air once the heat's been removed from it. So we're creating a refrigerator in this closet with insufficient ventilation. And now your heat pump water heater is going to be sucking in cold air. It won't be efficient. So this should be a fully louvered door for this heat pump water heater to work right. Also consider upsizing the tank. I put a 50-gallon in for the ADU, a 50-gallon in for the main house. We have 4 people in this house sometimes a year, no problem with 50 gallons. But some of your clients, you know, with large families are going to want an upsized tank, 65, 80 gallons. If you would typically put in a 50-gallon gas water heater, it is a good rule of thumb to put in a 65 or an 80 with heat pump water heaters because they recover a little more slowly. Don't leave the 5-gallon a minute Speakman shower heads in houses with heat pump water heaters. They use a lot more hot water than necessary. Put in the code compliant 1.8s. And don't allow recirc pumps to work on a timer and suck up all that hot water before people get in the shower. Chasney asks about Watt Diet. There's a link to download Watt Diet from Redwood Energy's website in the presentation, and we'll send you these slides. Okay. Yeah, water heater apartment storage, not for storage. Very good point. In fact, I'm going to run out and show you mine in a minute. And I had to move my golf clubs and folding tables and chairs away from it because it's inevitable that people are going to put stuff right up against their water heater in the corner of the garage or their closet. And so you sort of need to plan for that. But best practice, yes, give it plenty of room so it can pull air in and out and function the way it's intended. So lessons that we've learned through our all electric retrofits for heat pumps, they have an outdoor unit, often called a condenser, and an indoor unit or multiple indoor units. So think about where that outdoor unit can go and where those indoor units can go. The beauty of ductless mini splits is you don't need ducts. All you need to do is connect the indoor units with refrigerant lines and power lines to the outdoor unit. So you can get rid of that attic that really in many of our homes, the only thing that attic's doing is holding the ducts and the furnace and the air handler. But this requires us thinking ahead of time about where our equipment's going to go. And if we are using a ducted system, well, then even more so, we need to locate those ducts ahead of time and make sure there's no beams and rafters that it's going to run into. Same with heat pump water heater. We need to find a location for that based on where the power is or can be and where the plumbing is. Most of the time, you're going to want to put the heat pump water heater right where the gas water heater was because all the plumbing's right there. But sometimes you're going to need to move that. For cooking, an induction electrical circuit, you're probably going to need 240 volts, 40 amps, maybe 50. It's a lot of power. So you'll need an electrician to run that circuit and you'll need to find room in your panel. Watt Diet can help you do that. Now, electric and heat pump dryers. Some are 240 volts, the larger capacity ones, but I got 120 volt units that are working great. Good sized drums, not huge, more European style. But if you're limited on power, make use of those 120 volt units. And there's our contact information. Again, we'll send you the slides. So love to hear your experiences. I welcome your questions as you go through your own processes here. And Naomi, do we have time to run out to take a look at our heat pump water heater?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's do it. Wi-Fi is usually just fine out here, but do let me know if you're losing me. So I'm going into the garage. And I think I might need to spotlight myself so you see me full screen, right? Yeah. Am I full screen now, Naomi?
Yes, you are.
All right. So I'm here in the garage, and this is the heat pump water heater that serves the ADU above us. Okay. And I just wanted you to get a look at one of these. This is where all my stuff I had to clear so you could see it. First, I want you to see where the air goes on these. This is a Ream 50 gallon and it has an air filter up here. I just cleaned it so it's clean, but it pulls in hot air on the top here through this grill and blows out cold air right here on the side. So in my case, my workbench gets cold air blown on it when the heat pump water heater runs. Notice we oriented this outlet so it wasn't up against a wall so that it could get nice free airflow, you know? And a garage is a big enough space where there should be plenty of warm air around it for the heat pump water heater to do its job. It's important to note that this is one of the 240 volt units. And you'll see these bulges here and here. Those are the electric resistance backup elements. Heat pump water heaters, you want them to run in heat pump mode as much as possible, if not all the time. But the electric resistance elements are there for backup on those really cold days when your heat pump can't keep up. Those electric resistance elements kick on and do the job, but they're only 95% efficient. The heat pump's 350% efficient. So these are designed to use electric resistance only as backup. But, you know, that's kind of nice insurance where if you do have extra people in your house showering one after the other, well, those electric resistance elements can kick in for those occasional extra needs, but you don't want those running regularly or you're going to have higher electricity costs. Also, these have a programmable screen, so you can change the temperature set point. I just have mine set at 120, but some people, to get more capacity, if they're worried about running out of hot water, they'll make 140-degree hot water. Because think about it, when you take your shower at, let's say you like it at 110, you're mixing hot water with cold water to get that desired shower temperature. So if your hot water is an extra 20 degrees hotter, well, you need less of it to get to the temperature you want, so that 50 gallons ends up acting more like 60 gallons, let's say. Now, to make that work, you need to also install what's called a mixing valve. And the mixing valve takes the higher temperature water in your tank, mixes it with cold to get it to a non-scalding temperature, let's say 120, and then send it to your fixtures. They also have condensate lines. See the white PVC coming out the side here? This is the condensate, because just like your air conditioner, heat pumps make condensate. And so we're running that out the wall to the landscaping, but you can also run it to a drain. Then there's the temperature and pressure relief valve that needs to be separately plumbed. Other than that, we didn't put ours on a pedestal. Most gas tank water heaters are on a pedestal. We've since read the plumbing code and found out your elements need to be 18 inches above the ground. So we should have put this on a small platform, but you don't need the full, 3-foot platforms that some gas water heaters are installed on. Any questions on the heat pump water heaters?
Chasney asked if there are electric screens on newer models only.
No, they've all had them. You can also set them on your smartphone. So you can download the usage of your heat pump water heater on the app. So all the manufacturers have really cool apps. Some of these are also designed to participate in utility programs like PG&E's Water Saver program, where they'll pay you, I think it's $5 a month off your bill if you program yours to not run during peak period, right? You have it heat up the hot water before 4 to 9 p.m. so you can coast through that period without exacerbating the peaks that are already on the grid. So to do that, they need to be Wi-Fi enabled or have what's called a CTA 2045 communication module attached to them. And that's where that would go right here if I had one installed. Vacation mode's great too. If you go on vacation, you tell it when you come back and it doesn't run until you come back, you know. So a lot of nice technology features that our old water heaters just didn't have. The one I have for the main house is just 120 volt, plugs into a standard outlet, but looks much the same. They're a little taller than typical tank water heaters. Need to find a little more headroom to make them work. Anything else? Right at time, aren't we?
Yes, it's 10:29, so we have a couple minutes for any last minute questions anyone
Yeah.
has for Nick.
And you've got a few slides you want to get to, don't you?
Oh, yes, if that's possible.
Yeah, let me get back to that.
All right, so just a reminder that 3C Ren does offer a free code coach service that can help you answer your Title 24 questions. There's a number, and also you can go online at 3cren.org/codes to find out more information about that. And then just here are a couple of our courses coming up. If you'd like to learn some more, you also can visit 3cren.org/events for the full catalog of trainings that we have offering. And we will also be updating that soon and adding courses for the new year. So look out for 2025 courses as well. And if you have any questions about continuing education units, please email me at newman@countyofsb.org. And before we close, I'm just going to launch a little poll just so we can have some feedback about the course today. And yes, you should receive a follow-up email, which will have the slides and the recording, I believe.
I always feel like I shouldn't look at this part, Naomi. Like responses should be anonymous. uh,
That's your last pitch, Nick, to get good responses.
uh, okay, there's some new questions maybe.
Just
Oh,
people
just
saying
some
thank
thank
you.
yous. Okay.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and close the course. Thank you so much, Nick, for a great course and providing so much information and tailoring it to who we had here today.
Pleasure.
And
Thanks, Naomi. Good to meet
yeah,
you all.
have a great rest of your day, everyone.